Welcome to the Genesis Pod, your ultimate destination for real estate brilliance, business empowerment, and community growth. At the Genesis Pod, we're on a mission to turn dreams into reality because everyone deserves a sanctuary they proudly call home. Get ready to dive into a world of expert wisdom where we unveil the secrets of successful real estate investment and entrepreneurial triumphs. Whether you're a seasoned player or a newbie in the game, our seasoned pros are your guides through the intricate business labyrinth. Join us and let's embark on this exciting journey together as we build not just properties, but legacies. Tune in, ignite your aspirations, and become a part of the Genesis Pod family.
Hey everyone, this is Rita, and guess who's with me today? Hey Bryan.
Hello. How are you?
Great, how are you today?
I'm well. Thank you for meeting with me today. I know it's been a lot of rescheduling. You know, you and I live such busy lives, but we finally were able to get a date and a time to do this. So I'm so excited to talk to you today.
And that makes two of us. The interesting part is you and I have been working on a lot of things behind the scenes, and you would think while we're doing that, we can do this at the same time, but
Right?
we can't. So the cool thing about this whole situation is that you and I kind of started around the same base, that we both were building our businesses around the same time, like slight overlap. But I really wanted people to see or listen to you guys, we'll use specifically about, development and things like that, because you have a development company. You have a development firm called Delgado and Glen. So take it away.
Yes, very accurately put. I do have a firm by the name of Delgado and Glen. I am Glenn, and my other partner is Delgado, specifically. And what we do is we're a private equity development firm. And so on my side, of course, I bring the development, design, construction, sort of that arm of the company, while my partner Danielle Delgado specifically specifies in finance and the private equity side of it for our investors and partnerships that want to work with us and make, for lack of a better term, the future a brighter place in this area.
You know, this is a great way to ask, you and I come from very large states and cities that have its own personality. So on a basic level, what is considered real estate development? Like, how would you define real estate development? What is that?
Well, real estate development, I would say, is and it's so funny because there's so many scales to that as well. Residential is still considered development. If you're gutting your basement, like I did during COVID, that's a development. That you're developing another property from one level to another level. And of course, you have your flippers as well, where you'll buy some value add properties, of course, and you'll pump some money into it, and you flip it on the market and make a nice profit. So we saw the advent of that the last few years. I would say the last 5 to 7 years. We've really been seeing a lot of people getting into development on the smaller scale, and of course, you have the larger portions where we have, of course, we're in New York, so skyscrapers or even the development of different neighborhoods. We've seen the advent of Clinton Hill, Dumbo as well, and Domino Park in that area. So it really is such a wide range and wide scale. But ideally, I believe it's just taking a building, whether it's still standing or whether it's ground up, and turning it into something beautiful, both for the community, for investors, for a portfolio, and ultimately the overall enjoyment for different sectors that meet in that area. And it produces such a wonderful thing for the community when done right.
What do you think, because you have such a broad definition, what do you think is the common misconception surrounding development, and how can that best be addressed in this new normal that we're dealing with when it comes to real estate and development?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception about developers, especially when I was starting out, um, is that we're all about luxury, and we're all about just taking land and developing it and packing in human beings like sardines. A lot of communities do fear developers. I even in my background, I am West Indian. And I was first generation born here, and we've seen development in my country of Trinidad, and a lot of people are fearful, right? These communities that have been around for hundreds of years that are so close knit, they're afraid of outsiders coming in and putting up something that actually is not life giving to the community and doesn't showcase their best attributes, right? It's usually always about the bottom line that most people think developers are thinking with, but I myself do not think that way. And while I understand it and I respect everyone's opinion and market within development, I'm carving my own market. I should say we as a whole and us as a firm are carving our own market in this sector.
How are you carving out your own market in this sector?
So I will try not to bore you with the details, but um, it's such a big part of who I am personally that I just have to share from that aspect. So of course, how I got started was working with my father. He's a licensed master plumber with two contracting companies in New York City and on Long Island. So being able to study underneath him and study underneath our general contractors and our architects and really seeing the process of development of refined infrastructure, both in Manhattan and on Long Island. I was able to gain a passion for it as well as begin to start some of my own travels outside of the country and see how development was done there. Talk to locals, talk to different architects and civil engineers, both here and overseas. And I realized that this was a beautiful thing, but there's a bit of a lack. Um, as I started studying more heating engineering, I took a look at where we were and I started shifting my gaze to the ESG market, right, which is huge, and people aren't talking about it too much. I know recently the New York Build Expo, they brought over several architects, specifically from let's see, Canada, and I believe it was Iceland because of the geothermal and using reclaimed wood, things of that nature, green building in a whole, and realizing we can apply that to development. In addition, uh, New York is so beautiful, and you can make almost anything happen here. But one thing that I was noticing, and you were noticing this as well, Rita, um, there was empty buildings. There was a lot of abandoned buildings, especially after COVID, and even up to now, even not just 6 months to a year after COVID, but we're talking 3 years out now. Um, where we still have so many abandoned buildings, large buildings that were used for office spaces. Um, and people just left them, and not just newer buildings as well. um this is more recent, so that's why I wanted to touch on this specifically, but we're talking buildings 50, 100, 150 years ago. We're seeing buildings that are just left abandoned, and so rather than start from new, which is what most large developers would do, um, I shifted my focus of how can we recreate this? How can we preserve history if it's a historic building or if it's something so important to the community? And how can we create something new that produces life and is not harmful um, to both the community and the environment, right? Choosing good green space and um, seeing what that idea would look like and how that would carry out not only 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, but throughout further generations, right? It's not just getting the quick buck. It's not just building the trendy thing of the moment. It's shifting our gaze to what's going to last generations from now, and the lasting impact it's going to have not only on you and I personally, but throughout an entire sector, throughout an entire industry, throughout uh, an entire lifetime. You know, so that's, I guess, in a nutshell, that's um, that's the market we recognized, and um, I've just been so blessed to have so many partners with me, rallying with me, and we're doing some very cool designs, and they're working with me on this, and it's such a beautiful partnership. It really is, and so we're designing different projects that really fit those parameters. And it's been such a wonderful experience as we've been getting started.
You mentioned something really significant. You mentioned the importance of, not the importance, but you mentioned abandoned properties. Now, you and I both know that I'm in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that's been mentioned quite often, literally, it's basically abandoned stuff, like abandoned land,
Mm.
hotels, old schools, armories. I think
Mm-hmm.
when we first got started, one of the conversations we had, we saw an armory
Yeah,
that you were interested in, and
yeah,
you
I
wanted
did.
to purpose it. Like, for people who don't have your background or skill sets, how
Mm-hmm.
do they identify something that has the potential to be repurposed?
Um, I I
And when
think.
is it a good time for them to reach out to a developer for those kind of conversations? Because I feel you hear Pinterest and DIYing a lot, and I have my own concerns when it comes to structure and doing it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But when is a good time to say, I found something that I'm really interested in. I'm not really confident on how I would make that happen. Where's that line? This is, I think it's time for me to reach out to a developer.
I think it's important, and depending on what type of developer, of course, um, you know, capital is a big thing. It really is. It's one of the foundations. If you're looking to partner with a developer exclusively on that deal, and you're not coming in, um, as an investor, and you're wanting to buy the property outright, of course, it would be a question of capital, because if you have enough vision, and it's something you've had a discussion with planning and development of that region, and they're giving you the green light. You're ready to talk serious plans. That's when you're ready to speak with an engineer, of course, and getting sealed and approved plans. So I would say capital and just the green light from building and planning, that is so important. They have their ear to the ground. Um, on what the community wants, what's going to be best for the community now, and after this building is built, and after this development is put up or reconstructed, as we're talking about abandoned properties. So those are the two biggest things I would say for now. Just and because I'm pretty open, and you know me, Rita, I like to have conversations. I like to understand. Um, how and why people think the way they think about a certain project, and even and their vision. And so I'm pretty open to having these discussions, even if they're not ready to write that check today. But it's something they're thinking about, and they've had conversations leading up with their banking institution and with building and planning. And then we take it from there. We're full service, and so we'll work with you through that process, of course, and we're equipped to handle the rest from there.
It's really important to know when it comes to Delgado and Glen specifically, that you don't really focus on luxury, which is really important to know. You really do focus on things that can be identifiable and utilized in different ways, for the community itself, and for, the residents and stuff to use when you guys are on to the next project. Why is luxury not the focus? Because you and I are both New Yorkers. I've got different ways, but we're New Yorkers. And that is like a dream for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you and I have heard, don't you want to build this like $500 million thing? And don't you want to do this? From a real estate perspective, luxury is fine if luxury makes sense as the investment. But when you're building something, it just feels like sometimes luxury can be out of place. And when you're hearing a developer say, I too see that sometimes luxury can be out of place, it really calls into question why is luxury not a priority for you?
Yeah, well said. It's such a funny question. It really is. I think part of it was also, I guess my frame of thinking was, we live in New York, and there are so many parts of New York, which is what makes New York, New York. The diversity, not only in people, not only in culture, not only in tongue. I mean, we speak the most languages in the country, and it's also in properties, right? I've worked in every kind of property you can think of. Seriously, I have, and that's why I've gotten a good look at everything. And I've been blessed to say that I'm blessed to say that because it's been, I'm under 30, so I'm blessed to say that I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot, and so I love luxury in a different manner of speaking, but it's just I don't need to be another player in it, quite frankly. Everyone, not only as real estate agents, but developers, even interior designers, all the way down to expediters, are trying to do luxury. And it's so oversaturated, in my opinion. And if we truly had our way, it would be all luxury, all said and done. And it drives out some of the communities that can't afford it, to be honest with you. And then you get just I think there's stagnation um in luxury, and while it might make sense for other companies and certain neighborhoods, which it does, I don't think as a whole it's something that can be used as a blanket statement or a blanket plan for every emerging market, right? Just because somewhere is selling, um, for example, take one of my, I guess I have two hometowns, Ocala, Florida, right? That was booming after COVID. Doesn't mean everything needs to be luxury, and they've done, I think, a wonderful job of mitigating that, and not driving the prices up and making everything boutique luxury. So there's different, and this is why we explore redevelopment, right? What's going to be, we have to look at affordable options as well. It's not just the ultra wealthy that we need to cater to. Um, and even for my investors, I care about, I care about them as well. Um, and I go to bat for them, honestly. I'm the developer, but uh, I care about their bottom line, and I care about the community. And I want everyone to be able to sleep at night, to be honest with you. And it is a bit of a moral choice. Um, and I'm not saying I'll never develop luxury. Of course I will. But it's not my main focus. And I don't want that to be my brand. And I don't want that to be my identity.
I think the great thing about Delgado and Glen, there's two things that come with that. You guys are a great example of just because you can do something doesn't mean you want to. That's
Right.
one thing. And another thing is that not everyone wants the same thing as you. Like what's best for me may not be best for you.
Yes, exactly.
And coming from, I think what's really cool is that we literally have like two different divisions of the same industry on this conversation. That coming from a real estate perspective, that's really refreshing because living in the city for so long, but I have family in different parts of the state, different parts of the country, different parts of the planet. And the one thing that I've always respected was the fact that luxury was not the priority, even though you're capable of doing it. The priority is really us, the person that goes to work every day, sometimes has to puts food on the table, they have kids, they gotta make it happen, and
Right.
more of the priority, and they should be the priority, especially
Mm-hmm.
in real estate, because that's how you diversify a portfolio. If you keep
Correct.
it all on one thing, which is
Mm-hmm.
pure luxury, you're undercutting the potential of what could be the next generation of wealth, or the next generation of residents of the city, because now they're going to look out instead of in. So from a real estate perspective, that's really refreshing. But how do you navigate in an industry that the goal is luxury? We just heard from, The Real Deal, which is a magazine in real estate, just announced I think it was a $2 billion redevelopment deal in Austin, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And the objective of it is essentially to help middle to high middle income families find a place within Austin. But they got blowback from luxury.
Mm.
So how do you let people know that there's a space for everybody in an environment that tends to be a little surface when it comes to real estate or
Sure.
development? So how do you address that?
Well, it's funny. I believe that everyone has, it sounds so corny, but it's true. Everyone has their own voice. And so the right people will come along. I am a firm believer in that. And I've seen it in my own life time and time again. And even with you, Rita, and my team as well. If you have the right vision and you're going about it in the right manner, the right people will gravitate towards you when you're in an honest pursuit. Um, in addition, it's just continuing to showcase the facts, continuing to rally behind what you believe, and showing up. Showing up is important. And I'm I'm not only speaking to somebody that might be that will be listening to this and has either opposing views, is a bit younger, is a bit older, and has been in the industry, or is in another part of the industry. Um, but there's always a way to do things, right? There is a way to make it work, and it's not impossible. And again, if you keep showing up, if you keep making your voice heard, and you keep networking, um, there is a place for you. There is a place for this, and we just saw it in Austin as well. And I know we're going to see waves of this, and it's really shifting the focus of what can we do? What can we do? And there's a way to do it, partnering up with the right subcontractors, partnering up with the right interior designers that can source material at an affordable rate. There's still small quarries and lumber yards that you can use. It's um, finding honest subcontractors, honest general contractors, honest architects, um, people that are not out to just make a buck and for lack of a better term, buy a new Lamborghini. I'm sorry, but it's people who can see the vision and the bigger picture. That's a very real thing, and it's actually something that we see happening. I follow one. Um, I'm not calling them. It's a company. They're out in the Midwest. I believe it's Wyoming, and they actually got together, and it's so wonderful. What they did was they it's kind of crazy, but I love it. They got rid of, as a community, they voted on this. They got rid of the cars. They put in bike lanes, and they made the houses a little smaller, um, with ethically sourced material, so it wasn't incredibly expensive to revitalize the neighborhood. And all of the kids get to be closer and play together, much so what we've seen, you know, decades back. Um, and it really honed in on what is luxury, right? Is luxury a Rolls Royce, or is it being able to take a hot shower and cook dinner and spend time with your family in a warm environment, in a safe place with a safe roof? And so I think in Western civilization, we've gotten so used to over luxury and just this vapid sense of self, that we've forgotten what is important, what's true to us, and we take it for granted, to be honest. So there is a way, if people are willing to listen and people are willing to do their due diligence and research. There's always a way. There is.
I love how you said over luxury.
Mm-hmm.
I think that part right there is just like the mic drop in this whole conversation. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because you and I have had conversations plenty of times that I've had my own reservations about luxury. Growing
Mm-hmm.
up, for me, luxury was about quality work craftsmanship.
Yes.
It wasn't about the look. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't about the Calcutta gold and and the certain appliances. It was about the level of quality that can help last, you know. And sometimes I think that we lost sight of that. And hearing you discuss it in a way that luxury for the investment of community and luxury in the sense of quality of just the simplicity of things in of itself is the luxury.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think this is why I gravitate towards Scandinavian minimalism and New England architecture, because it's just so pleasing because it is symmetrical, and of course it's very stately. But the way the millwork, the kind of wood they used back in the day, um, you just don't. It's hard to see. We don't really get that where we're a postmodern society, and so now it's about just these $20,000 light fixtures that make no sense, and just quick cabinets and quick this and whatever's trendy, whatever's now, and we're not really understanding the waste that it's going to produce.
Mm-hmm.
Which is so unfortunate because how many times have we've seen, or you're showing a property, or I've been called in to redo the gas piping, or got a building, got a restaurant, and we've got to rip out these like pink bathrooms from the 90s, because that was in back then. But 20-25 years later, that money's gone the window. That's not an investment, because the money you pumped into that bathroom, it's not a lasting and sound design. And so even in our design, right, at the base level of working with our draftsman and our interior designer, even an interior decorator, it's okay, where's this from? Will this look good 50 years from now? Will this stand up 50 years from now? And so it's funny because we do like to use luxury materials. Do we want to use this kind of wood or this kind of wood? Well, oak is beautiful and it holds up, and this is the application in this building, right? All the way down to that I think about. And that's also one of the differences between, I believe, myself and another developer. I've been in the industry. I have held wrenches in my hand. I've worked alongside my father and his coworkers and our employees, and I've done the piping. I've done the laboring. I've dug the trenches. I've done the roughing in the winter. I know what it looks like. I know what quality work looks like, and I've had real conversations with real contractors, building owners, property management, and real estate brokers. And I've seen a lot of what's going on, and I'm shifting my thought process based on what I've seen and what I know to be true and what's going to be carried out and the legacy that I want to leave behind.
That was beautiful. Sorry. But
Mm-hmm.
I think also it's not just the one thing you did touch on it a while back, and I want to bring it back, is the fact that you also lived in Ocala. And yes, I've cracked a few jokes about Ocala. I'm because it's so tiny. Anyway.
Not anymore, Lord.
But the one thing I do like about Florida in relation to our state is that Florida, you're not dependent upon one area.
Mm.
to live. Like Florida, there's like everyone, there's if you're more into like the country perspective, there's towns for that.
Mm-hmm.
If you just want the Miami feel, go to Miami-Dade. Like
Right.
Florida is great when it comes to the diversity in their communities.
Mm-hmm.
So see, I can compliment a state.
Yeah. Florida is very unique, and I do like it for that reason. It's so sparse and spread out, and so
How can New York get there? Because you and we've traveled the state. I'm from the state. I have family in the state, and I feel like it's like Mello and the Knicks, or no, come on, it's not with the Knicks anymore, but it's like it's New York City, and then there's the state. How do we as developers, real estate agents, encourage more of that flexibility or diversity in communities in our state?
Okay, I have a few thoughts on this, and I love the question. So it's funny because I live, as you know, on Long Island. So I'm seeing my own microcosm here, even though I'm an hour, 40 minutes without traffic, but that's never a thing in New York. So an hour outside of Manhattan. Right. And so I think we have to shift our perspective to start looking elsewhere. You and I have talked at length about Hudson Valley and how beautiful that's looking. But funny enough, there's not a lot of talk about that in mainstream media. Right. We're still always pushing the five boroughs. And why? Because it's a safe investment for a lot of firms now starting out. It's attractive. If somebody, if an investor is scared and they've never been outside the southern region of New York, when they hear Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, Long Island City, Bronx, I don't know about Staten Island, but when they hear that, they're like, okay, that's tested. It's tried and true. I know what I'm getting into, and it's safe and it's cozy for them. But if you start looking at the numbers, it isn't as safe. Again, I say this from somebody who has real life experience where I've seen a project in the city was supposed to be 18 months. We slapped on another 6 months, as you do. Cost of inflation on top of that over 2 years of construction. We did or they did. I was a subcon for this specific contract that I'm thinking of now. But they did their due diligence. Guess what? Slapped with violations. New York City DOB loves to change the rules every 6 months to a year. It's annoying, but we get it. It's a safety reasons. Developing in New York is not an easy task. New York City, let me rephrase. And so the project's just sitting, and you're still paying money for scaffolding. You're still paying money for insurances. You're still paying money for violations. You're still paying money for the contractor, the subcontractors, the material. And all of a sudden, this safe project that you were investing in is costing you double than what you thought, which is why now we're in the advent post-COVID, we're seeing a lot of building owners turn almost break even with a project. That's something that they're not talking about. And so the only sense to make back their money, before 10 years is condo conversions, which we won't get into. We're squeezing. It's like, it just reminds me of like a tube of toothpaste where it's just plentiful. Now we're just squeezing whatever little we can get out of the city, and we're not really going to the store and exploring other options. And so it's shifting our perspective to, let's look at our sister state. I love to make fun of them, but New Jersey, even what they're doing and connecting with them, we already did through Port Authority. So how much further can we take this? Upstate New York, even Pennsylvania, and looking at that tri-state area, and not only just looking at it because you and I know, but it's showcasing that in the media. conversations and dialogues and things like what you're doing with your podcast and Genesis Home is so important to, again, I reiterate, to be a voice, right? To project what we already know as truth and what's going to be coming down the pike the next few decades. And so it's really us establishing what this market is going to look like now, and we can't be afraid of that. So I speak to those who are afraid to leave the city and that it's tried and true. And the people that are saying that are the ones that bought their buildings 50 years ago or have exclusive deals with the city, which are real things. And people who just have an exorbitant amount of capital to where they're actually not even, they have so much cushion, they're not even aware of the, their waterfall structure, the spending out money versus coming in. At that, at a certain point, it just becomes a game. So.
And I really think it's important to notify the fact that as much as we've benefited from New York City, we're not saying that we haven't.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much more to New York than New York City.
Right.
And by investing in the state,
Mm-hmm.
Above Westchester County,
Mm-hmm.
by investing in the state,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of, once again, similar to Florida in a way that you have the flexibility, but you can still protect what makes New York, New York.
Yes.
And I think the issue is that coming from a real estate perspective, I think the first thing people assume is that, oh, you're trying to sell me the state. I'm not trying to sell you the state. I'm trying to introduce you to a different way of thinking and open your eyes to the fact that maybe your money and the opportunities, if you're willing to, see the long-term investment in something. When I was a kid and my grandfather used to drive from Albany to New York all the time, he still loved living in Albany. Not because he hated being a New Yorker. The man will scream he's a New Yorker. He loved the fact that he can walk down the block and get some food and it won't be as dramatic. He can keep it simple. He can keep it homey. And as times went on, we now have this chasm that it's New York City and then there's the state. Like, even sometimes when I was a kid in New York, I said the world beyond New York. They just meant the world beyond New York City.
Right.
Didn't think about the state. And I think now that also in a real estate perspective, we're not diversifying our opportunities here. And we're not encouraging other agents or other investors or other buyers to look past our city sometimes, which would, if we invest in the state, in a way can help New York City in the long run because it's not so much pressure. We started having that conversation, and you're absolutely correct. Mainstream media is not prepared for those conversations. They're not going to because it's easy.
Yep.
So what can we do to rectify that? From my side, I know what I should be doing, but on the development side, it can't be that easy for you guys either because, once again, New York's identifiable. The celebrities in New York. The First Wives Club was filmed in this city. The movie.
Yes.
The movie. We have Sex in the City. People assume.
Yes.
And then you got New York, New Jersey, then you got the Sopranos drama connected to it. How do you say, look past yourselves and see the investment outside of the popular?
So it takes a brave, I'm not calling myself brave, but I guess I am. It takes a brave person to decide they're going to get into development and not immediately pursue luxury. And go the opposite direction almost, and not even that, but to then redefine what luxury means and those things that we discussed a few minutes prior. It's selling it to them, having these conversations one-on-one, going to events. Also, New Yorkers love, and when I say New Yorkers, I do mean all New Yorkers, but the mindset is obviously shifted from the boroughs to Long Island to upstate. They love to be behind. I mean, everybody does, but They love it's an identity thing too. They love to be behind something. New Yorkers love telling you that they're New Yorkers. Why? Because they're proud of where they come from, or even down to the boroughs. You know, they love repping that because it feels good. It's like this shield almost, and they're proud of that. Okay, and that comes from the average renter. To to the investor, to the banker, whoever's, oh, I work in finance. Okay, where are you from? I'm from New York City. It feels good to say that. Anytime I travel, oh, where are you from? I'm from New York. I mean, I'm a proud Long Islander. I say that all the time. You know that. You make fun of me for it. Where are you from? I'm from Long Island. I love it. I love what Long Island offers, and I'm proud to say that I'm from here. We need to create that same feeling. We need to create that same confidence and just shift it, you know, 80 miles north. We need to create not only an idea, right? Because the numbers have to make sense, which they do, which we know. Um, but also we have to create the idea that this is cool. This is not nerdy. And I think that's what it is, because New York City is so cool. It's cool to be from here. I mean, in my opinion, it's cool to be from Long Island. I like it. I like living in the suburbs. I'm a suburbs kind of guy. But upstate, we need to shift that. They think it's just all rural. There's so many wonderful shops, and even with the out, what's it called? That mall, the outlets. It starts with a
Woodbury
W.
Commons?
Yes, Woodbury Commons. That was great. And so, but people don't talk about that as much. Hudson Valley, I love a good Main Street. I love a good boutique town. And a lot of artists are actually making their way up to Hudson, for example. And even some parts of Pennsylvania where people are getting out of the city and they're going to places like Lancaster, for example. There's a nice little hub there too. But again, it's because I follow these niche Instagram pages, and then I established a dialogue with the interior designer or real estate agent that's really heading up that market. So it's creating a brand behind it. It's creating, oh, this is cool. I live here. It's creating that moniker that New York City has had for since its conception, I would have to say. New York's just been cool. And that's hard. When a place has had that rhetoric for so long, it's so hard to be like, okay, now we have to. What do you mean? This is always going to be cool. Yes, but there's more, and it will add to that. Oh, I'm from upstate. Oh, cool. What part of upstate? Oh, or living on what is it, Lake Placid? Oh, that's cool. They, people kind of know that, especially if you talk to Long Islanders. We have to make it cool. We made the Hamptons cool as well, so it can be done, right? It wasn't just the city. People, the advent of Robert Moses and such a formidable engineer and making the Hamptons cool, albeit not very inclusive because of the way they did the overpasses and the tunnels on the highway. They didn't allow for public transportation. So it was only if you owned a car you could go out there. Nevertheless, though, they made the Hamptons what the Hamptons was, and people love going out there, and even out to Montauk and these things. And they've made that their own folklore. Oh, you're from New York? Oh, no, I'm from the Hamptons, because they love claiming that little enclave. And we have to do the same for upstate New York. We have to essentially go big or go home for it. We have to be confident in our fact and in our approach. We can't just skittishly say, well, there's, and speaking for me too, I have to be brave and I have to be a foot soldier for this and really announce the presence of this emerging market and that it can work. And data does not lie. It doesn't. It's as simple as that. And as complicated as that. It's not simple, but yeah.
No, I mean, nothing is simple, but I think it's really important that we have these elephant in the room conversations, because it's not just New York going through it. California is experiencing their own version of it as well, where there's places that used to be really thriving and everything, but because it wasn't this city or this town or this thing or like these really big places, but then that those smaller towns or those smaller areas kind of faded. And especially in our generation, generations, millennial and younger, community is even more important now.
Mhm.
Establishing something for self is more important. But depending on something that's really in a way kind of stagnant.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's be honest, New York is going through some things. So we're not going to sit here and hide that.
Yeah. There's not as much money as people think there's left in New York. And also,
and this is not a dig at New York, and this is not a dig at the tree, but this is just a reality that's hitting, and it's hitting hard, and it's hitting fast, and it's hitting fierce. Mm-hmm. That you're going to look at your pocket differently, but you're not just look at your pocket differently, but you're also going to look at what community means differently now. And this is not for everybody, and it's not supposed to be for everybody. And I think we forced this idea, and you're absolutely correct that for me, when I say I'm a New Yorker, when people ask me where I'm from, I do say I'm from New York City, but I always say I'm a New Yorker first. And then if they ask, I tell them where I'm from. But you're absolutely correct in the sense to say that when people say they're a New Yorker or a New Yorker with the A at the end, they're from the city. And then there's New Yorker, which means you're from the state. They think like that distinction means something, but okay. But the importance of supporting those other communities and those other territories, especially when you're talking about things like redevelopment, you're talking about things of, small businesses and boutique businesses, and you're talking about, an expansion of investment, and $3,000 means something different in upstate New York versus it is in the city.
Right.
So, and you and I have seen both. I think you said something really important, that we're blessed, and we're blessed to see both sides of things. Like, we're blessed to see, what $3,000 can get you in your case, Florida, in my case, Alabama, in DC, Maryland, Virginia. $3,000 have different meanings. And when you see what that means, then you're now considered, what am I getting for that amount?
Ooh, that's a big one. That is a big one. I think in the same vein, when I said, over luxury, redefining what luxury actually is and what is necessary, and painting that picture of just a very intimate moment between a family, and that they have heat, hot water, and a cooked meal, right? We have this quality of life. I know so many wealthy people that are renting or have bought in New York City, and they can't actually, and they have buildings, and they can't afford to do the redevelopment because they would have to refinance and to bring everything up to code. That's another thing. People don't know construction laws. It's so funny. A lot of more higher up developers don't understand the basic laws of just construction, even down to like, union, prevailing wage. What does that even mean? Like, down to these meetings with subcontractors, right? And so when you touch a building in New York City, and they may know, you have to bring everything up to code. Past violations, and that is a lot of time and money. And both New York City DOB and what's the city, Con Ed, they'll shut you down. I've seen it again, time and time again, and people are racking up these fees. And in addition to the reconstruction, now they have to pay off these violations before they can have renters come in. And because of that, they have to charge such an exorbitant amount of money for something that isn't worth it or isn't inflated. We leave that up to the person to decide. In my opinion, I don't think so. But if you just love that area and it makes sense for you, then all right. But this is why we're seeing such a price hike, or this is why we have such dilapidated buildings that fall in disrepair, because more often than not, building owners are comfortable where they're at, and they can't actually afford to not fix these buildings per se, but to do the reconstruction, right? And to put to pump the money into it, to invest into it. And there's a domino effect. We've seen it with flooding, people that have no heat, basic necessities, right? And they're paying an exorbitant amount for rent. In addition, if you've purchased a condo, you have your maintenance fees and taxes on it as well. And yeah, there's quite a lot of New Yorkers that have shifted. We've even seen the advent of love it, the Berkshires, right, in
Mhm.
Massachusetts, where people have snuck away and they've just quietly like taken the money that they were paying for rentals, and they bought land and they bought a house, and it's quiet and nobody really bothers them. Yes, they can still get into the city for work. Yes, they still love the city, and they're still pumping money into the economy for New York. Um, but they came to a place and they came at a head. And that's what we did in COVID. We reshifted our thought process. We reshifted what is important to us, right? We get one life and it goes by incredibly fast, faster if you have children. What's important? What truly is important, and what's going to help me sleep at night, and um, what's going to be the best investment into me that might not necessarily be monetary, right? And
Mhm.
it and we can make that happen. Obviously, we cater to our investors. The numbers make sense. We do our due diligence. God bless my partner Danny, being on the finance arm as well. We know the numbers make sense, but it is a question of quality of life. What does that look like? I know so many people that are happier in Florida. You know, and I'm stressed living in New York, and they're just happy as a clam because they're contented in what they have. And this is not a knock on striving for more. We are New Yorkers at the end of the day, so we are strivers by nature. Um, but it'll never rule us, and I think that's what it is. And we've seen that in the industry where the quest and this insatiable appetite insatiable appetite where it's just more and more and more and more and more, and nothing fills us up. And that could be a very dangerous thing, and I've unfortunately seen it, and I'm sure you have, and we will continue to see it.
Yes. But you said something that I think you said multiple times throughout this entire conversation is the fact the importance of local and community.
Hmm.
And all I can think in my head is keeping it local.
Hmm.
So one of the things that Delgado and Glen is increasingly becoming known for is the fact that you guys try as best as you can to use the supplies that are or work with the businesses in that area.
Yes, yes. We're very community oriented, and which is so funny because everybody says it, but we do the work in understanding if we are purchasing a building from someone who had it before, um, or somebody that wants to stay in the building. We do offer that when we work with different community centers, whether that be a church or a life center, wellness center, or somewhere where we can do outreach, which I've done before. I'm also part of a nonprofit. So um, these are things that are just so important. Why? Because it makes humanity, but at a smaller scale. It makes New York, New York. New York isn't, and this is a misconception because a lot of states think we're mean. We're so community oriented. We really are, and sometimes we get blinded to to different facts. But at the end of the day, when you're outside of New York and you find out somebody's from New York, you want to hug that person. Not really, but you're like, yes, you just get it. You get me, and I feel seen and I feel heard, and I'll help you out. Um, we've always been that way, and that's one of the things that we're hard workers. We're a little gruff, but if you ask us, we will help you. We will, if there's something going on, you know, it's just don't waste our time, but we're willing to help, and so it's about preserving that, because then, like I mentioned earlier on, um, if we see these landlords aren't able to fix up uh, these apartment buildings, um, they sell it to the largest PE or REIT, and then those prices get jacked up, and then it moves out local New Yorkers. And then what we're seeing, and this is not a knock, but what we're seeing are transplants, um, specifically uh, uh, people from California. Um, that, funny enough, our rent is more affordable than some places in LA, Calabasas, Beverly Hills, that sort of thing. And so we have transplants mixing with, which is fine, but this is why there's such an interesting culture shift happening in New York City. And it's not how it was 30 years ago. We hear that all the time, not only from our generation, but from the older generation as well. And so it's, how do we keep New York, New York, and welcome people with open arms, but not drive out the ones who built New York, right? The local electricians, the firemen, the police officers, the local plumbers, the regular accountants, the bodega owners, the small business owners. People who, on their backs, New York was built on, the original migration period. Um, yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting topic. It's one that I'm passionate about, but we are seeing a shift.
You know what? Let's talk about something that bugs me, and
Mhm.
I know you don't have, like, you can give or take it, but it's a huge one, and that's actually the Airbnbs and the whole short-term rental thing. So recently, and we've had this conversation before about the concerns that people are having about Airbnb and Verbo and all this other stuff, and we've seen the articles. Like, we're not blind to it.
Right.
When people are visiting, I'm gonna put visiting in quotations, visiting like the cities and some of the towns, and you're trying to not preserve the community, because that sounds a little cloistered, but
Right.
protect what makes the community unique. How does, from a developer's perspective or an investor's perspective, how do we curve that to minimize that whole drama? Because it is a drama. I mean, we put in our leases that, short-term rentals is not a thing, but we do all that. But what's the developer's opinion on something that is essentially a complicated system? Is my safety sentence.
Yeah. It's interesting because haven't given this much thought, which is funny. But I do, right off the bat, because I use Airbnb so much. We're in this world. It's even if I haven't done my due diligence and research specifically on this, I'm surrounded by we're surrounded by Airbnb. If you travel at all, you've encountered Airbnb. It's as simple as that. So from one perspective, I love it because for the middle class to upper middle class person that's been saving, or has a different account, Roth IRA, retirement, 401k, whatever, and they want to pull some money out, or they have liquid cash, they can purchase a cabin, which we've seen, or a prefab cabin, whatever, what have you, and they can now start making passive income. So on one hand, it's such a lovely opportunity, and I have family and friends that have done it. But in a place like New York, and especially New York City, where it's so congested already, and with people having multiple streams of income, and so of course they're going to list their apartment. Why not? It's tricky. I think, and this is just my initial opinion, and the older I get, the more season and more wisdom I acquire. Through my work, I may develop a different or a slightly different opinion, but for now, I think it would help to limit the implication of or application of Airbnb in New York City. So what I mean by that is I don't think I would do it for rentals, to be honest. Specifically apartments, because it affects so many people, and so many different parts of the industry as well, because most people, although they take public transport, they will also be renting a car. And while that's great, it's I think it's just far too congested, as well as um, something that we could look to shifting elsewhere in New York. So I think Airbnbs in upstate New York is fantastic, actually. It gets people out there. It gets people to see what the big hub is, and it also stimulates the economy out there. Well, whether it's just one person, sure, but even um, even the shopping and the dining out and things of that nature. And I think Airbnb has done a lot of good, and that's in getting to put different regions that people might not normally have thought on the map. But for major cities, specifically like Manhattan, Brooklyn, and the boroughs, I don't. It's so complicated, and for landlords and even for agents alike, which is outside my respective scope. I know it can be such a hassle, and even with the example, which you could shed some light into it, where someone rented through a third party, um, and they ended up becoming, for all intents and purposes, a squatter for, what was it, 500 days? I can't remember exactly.
I
I
remember
don't.
there was one situation in California, and I think it was like LA area, and there was another situation here in New York where someone was staying in a condo in Manhattan for about, I want to say about about 500 days.
Mhm.
And in New York City, you can't stay in a place past, if it's a short term, if it's an Airbnb, you can't stay there past, they say 30 days.
Mhm.
He makes it down to 28. Anything past that, they are considered a tenant, therefore eventually considered a squatter,
Mm.
especially if they're not paying rent. And in New York, you have to go through housing court and you have to go through the process of eviction, which eats away at your profits.
Yes.
And but also on the flip side of that, you have people who will purchase condos and co-ops on like the floor, like have their relatives purchase things and on that floor and turn it into like a makeshift hotel.
Mm.
So it's always fascinating. I wanted to see, it's always fascinating that we have like the real estate agent's view on it, but
Mhm.
I've never heard the developer side or the contractor side of it, because it's essentially your designs and your buildings that are impacted by this. Not saying about not saying about the business, but by the bad actors.
Right. Right.
And by having your perspective on it, it is really important when people are looking to invest in real estate, especially outside of the city, or
Mhm.
when they are investing in the city.
Mm. Right. Right. Yes. So one of the thought that I was thinking, or that came to mind while you were talking, um, I started to think about the Airbnbs I've used. I've never used them in a city. I've always, if I'm going to, well, I mean, Nashville is a city, but even for example, I stayed in a house on the outside of it. And so it is a little different in that vein versus staying in a condo or co-op. Um, and at that point, it's just a glorified hotel if you're staying in somebody's apartment. I mean, let's call it for what it is. Um, it's going to feel the same way. In some ways, it's aspects of it, and there's elements of it that are missing. And so I think, and I'll have to. This is interesting because I think I'll have to do my research. No, I'll definitely have to do my research on this. But we saw the shift from a lot of major hotel players. Getting their behinds whooped by Airbnb and Verbo, and then them shifting to micro hotels, which I think was more popular overseas, specifically in Japan and Shanghai. I started seeing it in New York, and I'm sure it's been around longer than I've started seeing it, but the last 3 to 4 years, they weren't as popular or as aggressively marketed um, as now. And I think that's one to compete price point wise with Airbnb in the city. So it's a little, it still can't compete with like a large house on Long Island that you're renting out and then you drive into the city. That's very different. Or if you're going to the Hamptons for a weekend and you want a beach house. So different, such a different application. But I think these microtels came up like, hey, people need cheap. And even with Airbnb being able to pay like a portion of it down, I think it's 20 to 25%, which they recently started doing. And then towards the week before your trip, you pay the rest, the 75%. I think that's an attractive offer for people that don't necessarily have a lot of funds week to week. And so they know they can lock something in upfront, and they're getting something that, really is the best bang for the buck, versus most hotels where you're paying up front and there can be a lot of fees involved, which of course we can argue that Airbnb has a lot of fees. So it depends on the application. I think a no for the cities because you can just get a microtel or a micro hotel, and especially with condos and co-ops, it would be in the best interest of the building owner or the association, to not allow that. And if we could all just work together too, because they can work with it. All right, well, it's not going to work here, but then maybe I want to develop or buy a house upstate New York and a cabin because I'm still interested in Airbnbs, but I just don't want to do it within city limits, right? And that's
now when you
that's
purchase it outside of the city. Sorry to cut you off. When you purchase it outside the city, also attracting people to that area, which allows them to see that area differently.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm a huge fan of Salem, Massachusetts, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Don't judge; it works for me.
Hey, it's beautiful this time of year.
And the one thing I don't Airbnb in Salem for the same reason why people, for roughly the same reason why you said people shouldn't Airbnb apartments, is partly because I feel like I'm taking away from something. Because Salem, there's a lot of small B&Bs.
Yes,
and stuff like that. So I agree with you in the sense that though Airbnbs and Verbos make sense for outside of the major cities in the major, gang land. But I still think, but the way you're making it is that you're kind of tethering it to the tourist trade at the same time. So if these people want to visit the Catskills, let's take that place, and there's an Airbnb available overlooking the lake before it hits frost, that is an experience that you will not get down here. Definitely get that in the Catskills. It's ridiculously cold, but that experience you will never forget. So it is important to know that Airbnb has a place. Like every real estate, there's a place for everybody. So let's be honest. So we're not gonna say that's not a thing, but it is really important to know that used responsibly can help a community, and in a way used irresponsibly, it can impact your pocket.
Yeah.
And given that you spend time as a developer, as a contractor, to nurture these buildings and bring them to life and take an idea from a blueprint to a doorknob, and you see it hit the news of this $5 million, I don't know, I'm trying, yes, that $5 million condo just got shut down because it was creating a makeshift hotel.
Yeah,
I kind of feel like that's a dig in the sense of that was not what it was supposed to be for. It was supposed to be for something you to enjoy. But you also reiterated something that was really significant about how money in large cities like ours, they don't have the same translation as opposed to outside of the major cities. So that guy could afford the $5 million condo at the time he bought it. But reality hit and now he can't. Meanwhile, someone who has roughly the same setup but has it as a whole house with land, at the time when he purchased it, he was okay, but he's still okay because of the long-term benefits that come with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important that that is being said and that's being discussed, because you're right, it's not discussed in mainstream media, it's not discussed in normal real estate networks. Most of the time we are hearing more about how much this thing is sold for, but not what does that mean.
Yeah, that's a good one. That is an excellent point.
And coming from a development background, actually coming from just even contracting in general, it was really important for me to see this side, because it does not get seen enough. Normally we're hearing people just tell us what we need to hear. I mean, what we want to hear, but not what we need to hear.
Yeah,
we need to hear that there's a world beyond New York.
Mm-hmm.
We need to hear that it is okay if this doesn't work for you. We need to hear that $3,000 can get you a nice 1-bedroom in Manhattan, but that same $3,000 can also get you a nice 5-bedroom, 4-bath house somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So, and hearing it from a development perspective tells me that not only you see it from what it means when they open the door from the first time, but what it takes to get to that point. So, what is the one thing, and this doesn't sound like a real estate question because it is a real estate question. What is the one thing you want real estate agents to know about development and contracting?
Oh, that's there's so many things.
I'll be nice. I'll give you 5. Let's do 5. I'll be nice.
Okay.
So 5.
1, it takes time. If you want it done right, it takes time. 2, how do I put this? Stop chasing the commission and actually be a decent person. We all have to eat. We all have to eat. I get it. Hey, I get it. I'm right there with you. But I think, and this is specific for major cities. This is why we see the push of luxury, because they're chasing the check. Of course, on a $10 million unit, they're going to push that versus, some quiet, bungalow in a village on Long Island. So I would say, yeah, stop chasing the commission check. 3, work with us. Have conversations like you and I are having, Rita. These conversations don't always happen. So have the conversations, ask the questions. Maybe that's...
I'd like to reiterate, though, that part of why I think you and I work so well is because we do have those questions. I mean, we do. Even when they're uncomfortable, we will have those conversations, because I don't see what you see every day, and you don't see what I see every day.
Right.
And you reiterating the fact that don't chase the paycheck, considering the fact that now I know what it's like when you don't chase the paycheck. I mean, the commission, and it's actually a lot more cool. There is some truth, and also there's a desperation in it when you chase it, because then that makes you vulnerable. And so, what are your other 2?
I guess my other 2 would be explore other markets. There is life outside of luxury. And if you have ideas, talk to a developer, talk to a contractor, talk to an interior designer, talk to an architect, right? So it's not only just having the conversations and deals, but if you have ideas as well, and as you should, then talk to them as well. 5 would be to travel. I can't tell you. I've been blessed, to visit Paris, London, Austria, Germany, Sweden, Barcelona, St. Martin, Trinidad, Canada, and I have seen my fair share of real estate, and it's given me such perspective, and not necessarily in packaging the deal in the way that you would, Rita, but for my own edification of what building means. And I I'm so passionate about this, and because every building has a soul, you know, um, it's so funny. I do, just to reiterate, I love one of my favorite architects. Um, he's very not very underground. Anthony Aceves. Um, he created a compound, and his two of his kids were born in the house. If not all three, I can't remember specifically, but he built the house, and he's actually in the New York Times, and they were born in the house, and so him and his wife both share that the house now has a soul, and I loved it because these are people that are inhabiting these places, and we have to think about them as human beings, which sometimes we're just selling the building, and we don't. Once we get that instant gratification, that commission check, or the developer fee, or the return, um, we just on to the next project, on to the next thing, on to the next, on to the next. And specifically as New Yorkers, we have a way of keeping it moving, right? The way we perceive time is actually different than most people in other states. So with that being said, five, just travel and see not only the beauty that's out there, but talk to other real estate agents from other countries, talk to developers, construction workers from other countries, see what's most important, what they're looking for. Look at that market. How does that challenge your own? What is your takeaway from that? And ultimately, that experience should not only make you a better agent, but it should make you a better human being as well. So that's my number 5.
Nice. So, what are 5 things people should know about Delgado and Glen?
Say that one more time. Sorry.
What are the 5 things people should know about Delgado and Glen?
Wow. The 5 things
I warned you about this, that how I interview. I did.
Yes. I don't think I have a bullet point, but what I will share is, I hate to use this term. We are a grassroots firm because we all love what we do, and we all came together and we had the same vision, and we've also challenged each other's visions and ideas, but we always kept the foundation the main thing, which not only are we interested in diversifying our investors' portfolios, but we're also interested in spearheading and leading what new development looks like, not only in the tri-state area, but across the country. And so we have everything in house. We have the general contractors, architects, civil engineers, a finance team as well, lawyers, people that are rallying with us, and it's so special to see because majority of the partners are under 30, and people
I'm
have
over
voted
30. I'm over 30.
Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. So, I mean, a couple people in the firm are over 30. But we have been so blessed to be in rooms with people of influence and share our ideas more specifically on what we're doing, which I won't get into on this, but that'll be a later podcast. But our vision, right? And seeing what that looks like and what we offer, because it is a myriad of different things what we offer to the investors and people who just want to be joint ventures as well.
Okay. I know we're coming towards the end of this, but I was having so much fun.
This was a great discussion. We went long too, which is so funny. But that's, I mean, that's how you and I are, is that our relationship, we're able to talk about these things openly, and you've been able to teach me, and hopefully I've been able to shed some light on my industry, or my side of the industry, because we overlap, of course. And yeah, it's of course, how could we not go over time when it's such an extensive industry, and it's something that we are so passionate about, and we're in a state that we love, and we see so much. There's so much more. There's so much greater potential for New York, the tri-state area, and our country in general. And so we're shifting it. We're shifting the focus. We're shifting the conversation.
I will say, since being part of Delgado and Glen, I do enjoy the fact that, one, I have someone that I can talk to about things that at first I thought were weird. Turns out they were. Another thing that I enjoy is the fact that I'm more investment based in my conversations now going forward, as opposed to like not investment in forms of investment, but investment in forms of what this means. So I translate more than I did before. And the great thing is with you guys is that I do have a voice in my in the team, and the fact that if I had an idea or a project or something that I want to do and it's not there yet, just by giving you the idea, you kind of guide me into how to make that happen. Just like you, I will not touch on that yet.
No, there's so much in store for both Genesis Home and Delgado and Glen and us together. And I'm excited for those who are going to be listening to just see what's going on. Come and see and ask questions. Let's talk. Let's establish dialogue and push the conversation further. And if that turns into working out or working together, then let's do it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I am thankful for that. And I'm really, you've said it so many times and we've said it so many times, but I'm blessed. You know, when you're starting out in an industry that is not just saturated, but really emotionally driven in its own way, it's really refreshing that you and I kind of carved out a bubble within this industry and still was able to keep our integrity and humanity, if that makes any sense.
Makes perfect sense. I've seen it with 50 plus, and it's interesting because, and I will address it in my industry. I'm 27, and I mean that's the biggest question, right? Is the doubt because of my age, and I've said it before in person. I listen more than I talk because I know that I don't know everything, but I listen to people that are wiser and have been in it around me, and I digest that, and I go and I do my own research, and I check it with how I feel, both ethically and morally, and being a visionary, you know what I mean? And so it's it's interesting being in our age category and then carving out our own market, so to speak, right? And being so ambitious in it, but there's like this quiet strength in it, and we know who we are. We know what we bring to the table, and we know what we can do not only for communities everywhere, but for our investors as well. And it's something that I am excited to see in the next few seasons, and the launch of this.
And I'm excited to be part of the ride as well. We are going to do this again. You know that, right?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
It's just, I think it's really cool the fact that the stuff that we talk about over the phone, we actually just recording it for people.
It's funny because folks listening now, this is a weekly conversation Rita and I have.
Yeah, this is not
so many other,
But which I actually do have to text you later. But let's wrap this up really quick. There was so much to unpack here, but thank you so much for coming on. You are awesome. Tell people where they can find you.
Yes, so we are on social media, both Facebook and Instagram specifically, at Delgado and Glen, both on Facebook and on Instagram. In November, we're having a big push for marketing, so please be on the lookout for that. And just some educational materials as well to really understand who we are and our vision for the future and development, as well as the overall private equity umbrella that we fall under. We want to get to know you in a personal way as well, and for you to get to know us in a personal way, and really give our company a face. So yeah, please be on the lookout for that. Give us a follow. Message us if you have any questions, or if you just want to talk about architecture, design, development. We're always here.
Okay, thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye. Take care.